40 years since the phrase was originally coined, toxic practices of hegemonic masculinity has been shortened simply to toxic masculinity, the phrase certain to send any one person down the Twitter hashtag rabbit hole, be you hashtag #MeToo or team not all men. But behind its widespread use, the term toxic masculinity has a rich history beyond what is initially understood. Sociologist Raewyn Cannell, her work first published in 1980, suggested that there exist harmful political and social circumstances that stir up men's inner conflicts between their unique expressions of masculinity and the expectations of masculinity that society has of them. A man's individual capacity to compete with a standardized physicality, sexuality, and emotional expression is suppressed by the rigid structures of his immediate world, and he is then inclined to engage in toxic practices. Toxic practices are the gender norms that embody and legitimize prevailing social orders of sexual discrimination and shape media and public discourse on what it means to be a man. African scholars argue, however, that the term toxic masculinity gives very little meaning to communities that experience violence commonplace and validated by the practices of their own culture, race, and class. And who are we as individuals if not the sum of the media we consume, the values we are taught, and the behaviors we learn to accept, deny, and emulate? Outside of the lens of the global north, men in sub-Saharan Africa have their own practices and ideas around gender that are rooted in highly nuanced and vastly different environments. Toxic masculinity, then, is not nearly an adequate descriptor to understand all these different cultural norms and values, and greater efforts are needed to address the legacies of masculinities inherited by men in the Cape Flats and Joburg suburbia alike. I wish to sit down with 12 male-identifying persons from South African university campuses in order to discuss their understandings of masculinity and how they are having to renegotiate their expression of masculinity in the current social climate. As a country, we are demanding greater accountability for acts of violence, and I believe that it is up to every South African to confront their own biases and the ways in which we each prioritize and reward certain masculinities to the detriment of others. Locker room talk is everywhere, and it will not go away until we are all finally willing to change the conversation.